Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. Thank you very much for tuning in on this President's Day. We go to the phones as early voting begins tomorrow. Talk about a little bit about that, and then also some of the presidential tweet storms from over the weekend. GOP political strategist Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Doing all right. Let's start with the president. He was on Twitter a lot over the weekend, and really going off on the latest on Russia and the Russian the Russia probe. We all know what happened on Friday with Mueller, the indictments against the folks from Russia. What impact do you think this has overall on this investigation and on the White House moving forward?
Well, I don't think the tweets have anything to do with the investigation or have any effect on them. You see this sometimes on the weekends when he is kind of left to his own devices. He likes to play golf on the weekends, and he didn't play golf on Saturday because of the shooting, which occurred pretty close to Mar-a-Lago, where he likes to go on the weekends down in West Palm Beach. So I think the indictment itself, I think, was really probably not what Trump and his team necessarily wanted. It wasn't everything they said it was. It also wasn't everything that Trump's opponents said it was. It was somewhere in the middle. I don't think it's the end of the investigation. I think it's an important point. We'll see where it goes from here. The fact that you had 13 Russian nationals indicted and then three Russian entities indicted, I think puts away any doubt that Russia was attempting to or actually did meddle in our election. But the indictment itself did not prove collusion.
Right.
And so that's the important thing at this point. You also don't have any additional Trump associates who were named or who were indicted or anything like that. So, we'll see where it goes from here. I suspect this is not the end. I suspect this was just an important step that they wanted to reveal that who these Russian individuals were. And I think now the question becomes, are any of those people going to be prosecuted? Are any of them going to cooperate? Does it connect at all to any American citizens? If not, then this thing may get wrapped up fairly soon. Now, there are still possibilities related to financial crimes, related to obstruction of justice, related to foreign assistance. So in campaigns, these are all areas that could be looked at going forward. But look, again, I think this thing was from a 1 to 10 scale was like a 5.
Right.
I don't think it proved anything earth shattering by itself.
Yeah. I think one of the more interesting lines in it, and I can't remember it word for word, but it was basically that any U.S. officials or any Americans that played a role in this were unwittingly talking to Russian. In other words, they didn't know. They had no idea. So, I mean, it's hard to say that they were colluding when they had no idea who they were talking to.
Yeah, I understand. If you look at the indictment, which is 37 pages, it really shows how sophisticated this whole effort was. This is not just a matter of a couple Russians buying ads on Facebook. In many cases, these individuals were assuming American identities. They were using it was identity fraud, bank fraud, and so if you receive an email, if you're somehow associated with the Trump campaign, you're a supporter or a volunteer or maybe even a staffer, you get a message from someone who appears to be an American, trying to get you to show up at an event or trying to push some type of message. That's entirely different. That's wholly different than having a communication from an obvious Russian national or Russian entity asking you to do something, right? So that's where the unwitting part comes in, and I think that does explain a lot about what we've heard over the last 2 years, if that is the extent of it.
Is it because Bernie did not win that the news media doesn't focus on the fact that these internet trolls, were going after Hillary in support of Bernie as well?
Yeah, you don't really hear a lot about that, do you?
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. I don't really understand why. I think it's probably, yes, because Bernie didn't win. He's not really a factor, certainly at the executive branch level. I think if he had obviously become the nominee, it would have been a different circumstance. But yeah, I do think that's one of the more underreported stories. I mean, why did these Russian individuals prefer Bernie over Hillary? that's a question perhaps those on the far left need to think a little bit about and try to understand themselves.
Well, when you're looking at 2020 and the fact that Bernie Sanders may run again for president, I think it's worth asking a few questions. Why did the Russians want Bernie Sanders elected? So
no question, and I don't, maybe there are connections there that we don't know about. I don't know. It could just be they wanted to stop Hillary.
Yeah.
What's so puzzling to me about this is, Hillary was really pretty soft on Russia when she was Secretary of State, certainly with the Russian reset. And so I don't really understand. I think in retrospect, this is more likely to have been a desire to sow confusion and chaos into our system rather than, Russia absolutely preferring one candidate over the other. There's no question that they were trying to help one side over the other. But I don't think it was as much that they preferred Trump for policy reasons. I think it was more that they thought that it would be chaotic if he got in there, and to some extent it has been.
Yeah. Let's take a look. Early voting begins tomorrow. The Texas Tribune reporting some new, polls that are out. I looked through them earlier, Matt. I'm sure you have as well. Nothing to me really surprising in there as far as the statewide Republican primaries go. Anything you take away from the poll that was released today?
No, and I always have to say this when the subject of the Texas Tribune polls comes up. I respect a lot of their journalism and like a lot of the people over there, but the polling that they do is really pretty screwy. It's not a real poll. They have a panel of VIPs that they poll, and then they weight that back so it looks like the electorate. It's a very screwy methodology. It's so bad that the Associated Press refuses to report on their polling. So, I don't know whether it's accurate or not. There's no way to know that.
It usually leans to the left, does it not?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I remember when we were doing a race for comptroller 4 years ago, I mean, they had a person who finished third, way down in third, I think in either close in second or something like that. So, that person was really depressed. On Election Day, they thought, something untoward had happened because this Texas Tribune poll showed them getting into the runoff. So I use that as only one example. But look, to me, the two races that are interesting to watch are the Ag Commission race and the Land Commissioner race. Is George P. going to be able to avoid a runoff? Is he going to be in first place? What's the margin going to be? And then does Trey Blocker have a chance to defeat Sid Miller in the primary for Agriculture Commissioner? Obviously, with early voting starting tomorrow, the stakes are high. We're going to see what turnout looks like. I would encourage everyone to vote sooner if they're tired of getting phone calls and mail. The sooner you vote, the more likely you're going to be taken out of the targeted universe for these campaigns. Yeah. And so everyone should go out there and early vote.
What do you think, just real quickly, what are your thoughts on the Sarah Davis primary?
Yeah, I think she probably wins. This is a state rep race down in Houston that the Governor Abbott is going against an incumbent. I just, obviously, she and the governor are pretty crosswise on a number of issues, life being one of them, certainly, but ethics being another. The governor's really all in there. I think he spent over $150,000 to help the challenger. I suspect Davis will narrowly win. She's had, a pretty good track record there politically, electorally. But boy, that one's hard to know. It's an expensive district. It's an urban and suburban district. And I don't think she's ever had the kind of money and organization run against her that you're seeing this time. Whether a challenger can take on an incumbent and be successful in a very quick 3-month primary remains to be seen.
If Sarah Davis wins that, how does that reflect on the governor, in your opinion?
Well, it's not helpful. I mean, there's no way to spin that. Obviously, if you're going to get that engaged, you want to make sure you're successful. I suspect that they were very careful about choosing the 3 races that they chose. It sounds like they're doing a lot of digital ads in addition to the TV ads and the other things. So, I don't think he has to necessarily win all 3, but if he were to lose all 3, I think that might weaken his political power at the Capitol with other legislators who may not feel all that afraid of going against him at the legislature. Yeah,
definitely. All right, Matt, tell folks how they can sign up for your newsletter and also how what your next podcast topic is on.
Absolutely, yeah. The podcast is called Mac on Politics. It's on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and on the web at mackonpoliticspodcast.com. Our latest episode is with a White House correspondent from Yahoo News named Olivier Knox. It's a great episode about the Trump White House. We also do a morning newsletter every weekday called Must Read Texas. You can sign up and get a 7-day free trial. We take all the news from around the state and send it to you every morning. MustReadTexas.com.
All right, very good. Matt, thank you as always. We'll visit with you next week.
Thanks, Chad. Take care.
That's Matt Mackowiak. You can follow him on Twitter as well, at Matt Mackowiak.